Welcome to the Strengthening the Pipeline from University to Private Industry session. I'm pleased to be moderating this panel webinar for this important summit organized by the Asia Foundation in partnership with the U.S. Department of State and the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. If anyone is having issues with WebEx, we have a WebEx representative who can support you. Feel free to enter requests into the Q&A box at any time on the right side of your screen. To chat and exchange ideas with other participants during this session, please visit the STEM Trilateral Slack group, which you will find in the chat. And finally, if you need interpretation services, please view the chat for additional information. My name is Debra Knopman. I'm a former vice president and now a principal researcher at the nonprofit RAND Corporation and a civil and environmental engineer by training. I also serve on the board of directors of the Asia Foundation and the Henry Luce Foundation. So we would like to begin this session with a few polling questions to give us a better sense of our participants for this panel. So let's bring up the first question, which is, in which country or region are you currently living? A, Japan, B, Republic of Korea, C, United States, D, East Asia, which neither Japan nor Republic of Korea, E, North America, not the US, F, Oceania, G, Europe, and H, other. So if you'll just click your answers, you should see a polling box on the right side and start filling in your responses. And we should get the results in a minute. Okay, still waiting on that. I'll go ahead and read the other questions. Question 2 is, how would you describe the current stage of your career? A, student, B, early career, which means postgraduate, postdoc, or your first STEM-related job, C, mid-career, D, later career. And then finally, our third polling question is, how would you describe your role in a mentor-mentee relationship? A, mentor, B, mentee, C, a bit of both, and D, neither. So if you can click on your response to each of those and then click on submit, we'll get your responses tallied up and share those results with you. Okay, here we go. We have so far recorded about 67% of our participants from Japan, about 20% from the US, and a small percent from Republic of Korea and other locations. Let's see, for the second question, we have actually a very good distribution of not so many students, but we have about 12% early career, 32% mid-career, 28% later career. And finally, for the third, again, a nice distribution across people participating in this panel that are mentors, 17%, mentors, 12%, a bit of both, 22%, and neither, 18%. So this is a great way, I think, for us to kind of set the stage for our conversation. So you will hear from the three panelists who on this panel who each emerged as real leaders in their field in support of women in the early stage of their STEM careers, as well as women on the path to advancing toward leadership positions. And this panel is intended to share insights and advice on how women in STEM fields can navigate in their academic institutions into private or public sector careers. And for women already in the midst of their careers, how they can advance greater responsibility and leadership roles. I know from my own experience how important these relationships between academia and the private sector and public sector can be. And after working for 4 years in the U.S. Senate on water resources and environmental policy, I returned to graduate school for a PhD in hydrology and environmental engineering. And after I completed my coursework for my PhD, I secured a student position at the U.S. Geological Survey, which is the premier earth science research organization in the U.S. That position enabled me to work on my dissertation as part of my job, while also working with the Geological Survey and its research staff. And after I finished the dissertation, I stayed on at the Geological Survey 7 more years before moving on to the next stage of my career. So I'd like to just set the stage a little bit here for to kind of set the big picture as we move into the panel discussions. I think many of you may know in most Asian countries, the proportion of female students in STEM field study areas tend to fall as the level of education increases beyond bachelor equivalent. In Japan, just about 10% of engineering researchers are women and 14.2% in the sciences. In Korea, in STEM research occupations, women make up about 17% of the workforce. And in the U.S., women remain underrepresented in the science and engineering workforce, with the greatest disparities in engineering and computer sciences. So with these statistics in mind, they kind of provide a big picture view, but we want to plant our feet firmly on the ground of the here and now in this panel. In their presentations, you may detect some cultural differences among the panelists related to their home institutions, but more important, you will hear common themes of how to create conditions conducive to increasing women's participation in the STEM fields. And our panelists' presentations will set the stage for a question and answer session that we'll have in the last 20 minutes about practical ideas for fostering the conditions and support systems that will enable women to grow and thrive. So we'll invite your questions in the Q&A panel on the side of your screens. We will get to them after the presentation. So let me now introduce each of our panelists, and they will present sequentially. I'll ask each one of them a question at the end before we move on to the next one. Natalia Villalobos is the head of global programs for women tech makers, Google's outreach program for women in technology. She scaled women tech makers from a once per year event for 300 women in 2012 into a sustained program that now engages and provides a community for 200,000 women annually in 190 countries. Natalia applies a gender equality and diversity, equity, and inclusion lens broadly. Our second panelist is Dr. Hyo-Suk Lim. She is the executive director of the satellite operations and applications at the Korea Aerospace Research Institute. Her research mainly has focused on satellite data applications in the earth sciences, calibration and validation of satellite data, and international collaboration for remote sensing. Dr. Lim is also president of the Association of Korean Women Scientists and Engineers, KWSE, which was founded in 1993 as the first association of women scientists and engineers in Korea. Catherine Ohura, our third panelist, is the CEO and executive director of the Global Health Innovative Technology Fund, or GHIT GIT Fund, a Tokyo-based international public-private partnership fund for global health research and development, It's funded by the government of Japan, life sciences companies, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Wellcome Foundation. Previously, Catherine worked in the pharmaceutical industry in Japan and the U.S. at such companies as Bristol Myers Squibb and Kyowa Kirin in executive roles. So let me turn this over to Natalia. She'll speak for about 8 minutes, and then we'll ask a question and move on. Natalia.
Much. Really looking forward to today's conversation, and I know it'll be what I hope to be, the first of many. And I encourage folks to, connect here in the Q&A, and then also towards the end of my slides, I'll also list my Twitter, where I'm very open to doing mentoring and continuing this conversation, since I know we just have a brief few minutes to connect here. So yes, my name is Natalia Villalobos, and I'm currently Google's Feminist in Residence, and I lead Women Tech Makers. And it is a joy to be able to provide scaled scholarships, initiatives, videos, and offerings to women around the world. And I sit with about 30 women within Google, I should say men and women. And what we're really aiming to do is to provide equity and inclusion opportunities for women in 190 countries. And when we are doing that, we're really looking at how might we best support women in thriving. So looking forward to starting this conversation, and it's really good to see some of the polls too. I'm going to try to curate some of my talking points. Thank you so much for folks who are joining us from Korea and from Japan. Good morning. Thanks for waking up with us, and looking forward to sharing a bit more about myself and the program. So next slide. So a bit about Women Tech Makers and myself. I've been at Google for about 10 years, and I've been doing feminist work professionally for about 7. I used to call myself a professional feminist, and basically what this has meant for the last 7 years has been to grow Women Tech Makers from my 20% project, which, as many of you might know at Google, you have 100% time. Could be about 120%, but we spend about 20% of our time really being able to give back to the community. And my Give Back to the Community project was Women Tech Makers, and it was started by Megan Smith, who later became President Barack Obama's Chief Technology Officer. She started Women Tech Makers as a way to really bring women in tech together, because it was so rare to go to a tech event back in 2012, and even before that, the Anita Borg Institute's been doing some great work for years, but it really felt lonely for women to come to tech events and not have a community. So in 2012, Megan's like, we need to change this. And she created Women Tech Makers. And I partnered with her in about 2013 to step into this work full time and think about how can we provide visibility, community, and resources for women around the world, knowing that it's difficult to be what you can't see. And that really reflected our visibility pillar. And community, when you're feeling lonely, can really be the sisterhood that you need to lift you up. And we thought that that was a really vital component to our strategy as well. And then we did see that there were barriers to entry and a lack of access to both applied skills, or what we would call soft skills, and technical skills as well. And so these 3 pillars, visibility, community, and resources, really have defined the strategy for how Google is supporting women in technology around the world. And so here are some of my friends and some of the events that we've done. The picture actually in the bottom right is from our office in Roppongi Hills in Japan. I've had the opportunity to sit with many incredible women from around the world and really listen to what are the unique stories, what are the unique solutions that we need to create to really address regional needs. So next slide. So our strategy has really been focused on, long-term, like I said, visibility, community, and resources, but this word about thriving is so important. And when we talk about thriving, and specifically, Women Tech Makers is about women in technology outside of Google. There's also great folks focused on helping women inside of Google, but I'm looking at how do I change ecosystems and how do we help women thrive? And I think that there's a few components to that when we're doing work that's both internal and external. And those 4 things that I would mention would be about hiring, progression, retention, and culture. And in all aspects of the work that we're doing with communities and in shaping industries, both from academia and to the private sector, and then once people get here, how are we making sure that there is a culture of belonging, a culture of inclusion that makes sure that the pipeline doesn't become a leaky pipeline? We can't just hire great talent, we have to retain great talent. And that is an opportunity for all of us to provide a more supportive experience for women around the world. And so when I sit with women, regardless of whether it's speaking with folks in the United States, talking to women, in Korea, in sub-Saharan Africa, across India, we do work in so many different places. I'm always reminding folks that pathway, whether it's from academia into the private sector, or whether it's someone who is, a stay-at-home mom who's trying to figure out her pathway into tech, I think what's really important is there is no clear path. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. And so it's really important to think about that there is no mold or no model to follow. We all have to be trailblazers in a lot of this work, and Women Tech Makers is here to support that. Next slide. And we focus on economic opportunity. And I'll not, you can read this slide, but basically we're really focused on what are the career development skill sets that women need in order to participate in the tech industry. And this can be everything from technical skills to applied skills, negotiation skills. I know that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, as an example of here, really had focused on supporting more women across Japan. And I think that there have been some things that have worked and some things that haven't worked. What are the root symptoms that really prevent women from participating in the workforce, whether that's going to be childcare or culturally. And so we really try to, with Women Tech Makers, address the roots, not just the symptoms, so that we can make sure that more women can participate in the workforce. A couple things here is that during COVID, our team really thought deep and hard about what are the inspiring materials that women really need right now. And we came up with Spotlight, which I encourage you to look at, which is a video series about women's career journeys, and then Founded, which is a podcast specifically highlighting women founders from around the world and what they've been able to accomplish on their personal pathways. Next slide. And so to date, I'm really excited to share that Women Tech Makers has provided over 200,000 economic opportunities to women in over 190 countries, and our community continues to grow. So I really encourage folks in the Q&A and on Twitter to let me know what are the resources that you need across your regions. And I would love to bring that back to my team to ensure that we're building solutions for everyone. Next slide. I want to highlight one leader here. Her name is Emma, and she's a colleague of mine. And she's a computer scientist on our cloud team. And specifically, Emma broke the world record for calculating the most accurate value of pi. Now, this is actually really difficult, and I encourage folks to look up Emma's superb work in this area. She's one of my favorite Women Tech Makers, and you actually can't see it, but she's wearing a Women Tech Maker shirt. And she is such an incredible scientist, and she's a leader that I look up to. And, I encourage folks here, regardless of your level, to always think of yourself as a leader, regardless of your career experience or whether you're new to tech or, you have many years of experience. Let's be reinforcing to each other that we can accomplish great things at every level. Next slide. And so I leave us with two inspiring messages as we step into the next speaker. Empowered women empower women. Now, I strongly believe that talent is everywhere and opportunity isn't. And it's up to us to be able to make sure that when we're in rooms where other women aren't, how can we bring more seats to the table to make sure that women can continue to be in places of decision making? How can we continue to lift others up and not take the opportunities just for ourselves, but to find opportunities and give them away? It's such a beautiful place of power to empower others in that way. And next slide. And lastly, this is a personal motto of mine, build the sisterhood. So building the sisterhood to me means being able to share what you learn at every phase of your career. Whether it's tips or tricks, we all know that there's going to be setbacks and we're going to need each other, that deep, that sense of community to really be able to succeed long-term in the tech industry. And, for me, I would leave this too, is when you're thinking of your sisterhood and building that within yourself, what is your personal career board? Who can talk to you about career skills? Who can who can give you the hard feedback. So build your personal board, and that can be people of all genders. And that type of sisterhood, that collective, is really going to help us on that long-term pathway. And so one book I recommend everyone to read is one from the Harvard Business Review, and that is called On Women and Leadership. And so, it's going to take all of us to bring more of us into the rooms of decision-making and to bring greater gender equality to the tech industry. And I look forward to hearing your questions, both here and on Twitter. Thank you so much. And last slide, I'll just say is my contact information in case you want to continue the conversation beyond here. Thanks.
Thank you, Natalia. That was terrific. I think we have time for just one question now, and then we'll come back to you at the end. But I'm wondering if you were advising a new tech firm on how best to attract women, particularly those early in their careers, to their workforce. What would be your one or two or three pointers, words of advice for them to take, perhaps drawing on the changes you've seen since you started Women Tech Makers 8 years ago?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Thank you for asking that. So specifically, some things that I've seen work. A couple of things. It's something that we have called lunch ninjas. I don't know if that is necessarily an internal or external term I should be sharing, but I love it as an idea. The idea of lunch ninjas is that when someone is new to an organization, again, maybe a woman coming into this workspace might be the only software engineer on her team, and you want to make her feel comfortable. Something that we do is we actually are able to connect that person with another mentor or someone in their home office. And that creates a sense of belonging. It goes back to that sense of sisterhood. And again, it can be any gender, but it can be hard when you're first starting out to reach out. And so the more that we can automate, the more that we can build structures and systems that create greater connection in the workplace. I think that that's something that we can really do. We talk about diversity, we talk about inclusion, and as the narrative has come along, again, we're continuing the conversation with equity and belonging. You'll hear me probably talk about it a couple times today. So that sense of belonging is really important to me. Another thing that we can think about too is when we're looking at right now, Google's going through a performance review season, and it can be hard to talk about our accomplishments. So often women are in a place of talking about the we or the us. And that is true. It does take a collective, but we also have to learn to stand in our power, to stand in our own contributions, and to talk about those contributions, because ultimately we need to sell ourselves when it comes to performance review season. So I would encourage companies to actually build programs and to build, like office hours or promotion review committees or clinics, to make sure that we build these empowering this empowering language and this kind of structures where anyone can come in and say, I need help on my promotion packet, and we can help them stand firmly in their work. So promotion clinics really help, office hours really work. And again, that's a place of helping that woman progress in her career. And then lastly, I would say is employee resource groups. I think we have to acknowledge that intersectionality is so important in our work. While I am biracial, I identify as both white and Latina. I see so much value in seeing and experiencing communities like myself. Employee resource groups can also be for parents. And so when we're looking at creating that sense of place and home, what can we as organizations do to create that culture of belonging? So yes, I would say all three of those are really important, and whether it's going to be creating those private, candid conversations, in a lunch ninja type system, or whether it's going to be creating opportunities to help women stand in their power with strong language and owning their strength, to really creating that sense of belonging. I see all three of those as just boilerplate starters, and I'm happy to talk about more solutions.
Excellent. Terrific. Okay, well, I'm sure we'll be coming back to some of those themes. So let me turn now to our second panelist, Dr. Hyo-Suk Lim, and you should proceed, and we'll pick up a question or two after you finish.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning. I'll talk about the international collaboration activities by the Association of Korean Women Scientists and Engineers. I'm a president of KWSE. Next slide. KWSE is founded in 1993. This is the first association of women scientists and engineers. It was aimed to empower scientific capacity and to promote the status of women in university and research institute. The major activities include encouraging the participation of women industry R&D and strength international cooperation and building scientific capacity through domestic networking, and finally promote science education and culture. Next slide. The KWSE has the member right now, 1900, starting from 230 in 1993. By degree, 70% is PhD and 23% is masters. By affiliation, we have research institute 32% and university 30% and government 10%. By major, we have life science 23% and chemistry 15% and information 10%. Next slide. The importance of collaboration and network is very, by analysis of research, as we have found, the woman is less mobility than men, but the Nobel laureate, Nobel Prize in chemistry, they have important of collaboration and multidisciplinary. Next slide. The KWSE key achievement for the network platform, we have two kind of network platform for women professionals in SNT, for next generation women in STEM. For women professional in SNT is the three kind of BN is the convergence conference and academia conference and webinar, MEBIST. I'll talk about the detail in later. And for next generation, one expanded horizon is the Smart Sister program and the Young Woman Scientist Camp. Next slide. BN is starting from since 2003. It is held every 4 years. BN provides an international research platform for research outcomes exchange in the field of biotech and information, energy and environment, earth and nano and space technology, conjunction with special session on gender, leadership and policies. Next slide. Academic conference and webinar we held since 2014. It focused on individual woman researcher to strengthen research capability and to expand the research networking. It is for Korean and international, especially for United States and Canada. It's also cooperated with international organization for women in STEM. Next slide. MEBIST we had since 2014. It is to discuss policies for women in STEM and build a policy development map towards gender balance in Asia and the Pacific nations. It was conducted international collaborative research on policies since 2014. Next slide. YWS camp since 2012. It was designed to help the next generation of female scientists and engineers to strengthen the global competitiveness and learn global attitude for global outreach. We have a program, lecture, and research presentation, mentoring group discussion, and cultural exchange and lab tour. Next slide. Smart Sister program is since 2013. I laid the foundation of networking and academic exchange between Korean and international women scientists and engineers living in Korea. It is composed of mentoring session, field trips to research institute, and invite lecture. As of 2019, from 5 regions, 194 participants from 24 countries. Next slide. I want to suggest for the future, it needs for cooperation between NGO and GO and activating global platform. It was establishing the implementing policies for balanced development of human resource in STEM in country. It was supporting domestic and international projects, and it gathering the voice of women in STEM research sites in convey to making policies. Women in STEM, we are together, then we are stronger then. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hyo-Suk. That was excellent. Let me ask you a question. Following on your last slide about the importance of collaborations, what would be your top priorities if you were advising the government on what they could do to be most effective in increasing the participation of women in STEM fields in the Republic of Korea? What do you think the government should be doing more than it is currently?
Currently, yeah. The KWSE recommended to government to hire more women scientists and engineers in the research institutes and university. And yeah, the industries is another problem. Yeah, the government cannot control the industry, as you know. Yeah, mm-hmm. But yeah, KWSE continuously to recommend to government to hire more women scientists and engineers in the research institute and yeah, university professor, as something like that. Yeah.
Good. Okay, let me turn to our third panelist, Catherine Ohura, and we'll come back after Catherine makes her presentation with questions, and we'll open it up for all of your questions. So I encourage you to start putting in some questions in the Q&A panel on the right side of your screen, and we'll have some time to have some back and forth among the panelists. Let me turn this over to Catherine now.
Thanks, Deborah. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I'm really happy about this opportunity to really share a little bit about myself. And I strongly agree, fully agree with Natalia was saying earlier in terms of there is no one way or one right way or no clear path. I think we're all pioneers and pathfinders in what we do. And my talk here, it kind of goes along those lines. And I wanted to share 2 points. One being my personal journey as to going from graduating from school all the way to where I am today. So that's one. And second, the organization that I work with right now, the GHIT Fund. So I wanted to share a little bit about that as well. So those twofold. And again, don't see this as one, correct way. It's just one of many, many ways, where STEM can lead to in terms of career path, but just life in general, I think. So I'm going to stay on this slide for just a little bit and just kind of talk through it and some of the significant events and turning points, etc. Again, just to share examples in real life, if you would. So born and raised in Japan, I went through a Japanese educational system through middle school. And then from high school, I went into the international school environment where I started learning English in a U.S. Education setting, and finally went to college in the United States. As you see on the logo here, University of Denver, so I went to Colorado and studied chemistry, math, and business. And I'm going to stop there for just 1 second because that combination of chemistry and business, at least at the time at my school, was very, how do I put this, not normal. And again, going back to the theme of Pathfinder and really, as I put in my title, the why not, that key word you'll hear repeatedly today. I said, I was asked by my mentor at the time at my school, at the chemistry chancellor actually happens to be. And he said, Catherine, why are you doing, I understand that you would do chemistry and that's great. And typically you would combine that with biology or physics, any other natural sciences. It's great that you have math in there, but why are you doing business? That's just not, it's never been done. There's no other students that are doing this. Why are you doing this? And I said, you know what, it's unfortunate that there's no precedence. However, it's what I want to do. I'm interested in it. I want to combine the science and the business aspect of it. I thought it was a great way to learn the basics of business. Hence, I just wanted to do that as a dual major. And obviously, he supported that. He said, okay, that's fine. Whatever you say, if that's what you want to do. And so I did. And I'm glad I did. And I think to this date, I'm probably still one of the few who did that type of a dual major. But that actually led to, the right-hand side of my page, which is entry point into the pharmaceutical industry. Because I really thought about, okay, how do I combine this chemistry, math science degree and the business? What is it that I can do? What are some of the options that are out there? And pharmaceutical industry happened to really fit and match that, what I wanted to do. And so first I joined Kyowa, a Japanese pharmaceutical company, followed by Bristol Myers, which is a U.S. Pharmaceutical company. But all my period at Kyowa, it was really about learning and finding my functional skill set. I would say, that was probably the biggest, goal. And I didn't know at the time, but it ended up in hindsight that's, kind of what ended up Kyowa ended up being for my career. So I tried different things, as you can see on my list here. I started out with CRA, which is monitoring clinical trials. I did regulatory affairs. I did safety. I did project management, et cetera. So I did quite a different, different roles within drug development in the pharma industry. And through all of these experiences, I finally met my calling, if you would, or I believe so. Is the project management piece that you see in here. And you may recall I mentioned a functional skill set earlier. That I can't emphasize the importance of functional skill set because that will give you the confidence, that will give you a career path, that will give you a direction as to where you want to go and what you want to do and how you can utilize those skill set in your career. And you'll see that sprinkled through my career, my entire career, because I really hung on to that project management functional skill set throughout. And I just merely applied those knowledge and skill sets throughout. So I would say, one thing, one takeaway from this is please, think about a functional skill set or something that you're good at. And you can say that you're better at than anybody else, almost. And to really, study it, try it out to the extent, to as much as you can, and hone in on those skills because it would only help you and differentiate you. So that's the one experience I really, gained from the Kyowa experience. Following, I went into Bristol Myers, and as you can see, my first role you see here in project management. Remember what I said about the skill set, the functional skill set. So I took that and went to a completely different company, kind of applying those skill sets. So that was the entry point into my Bristol-Myers Squibb career. However, if you just kind of scan through my roles within BMS, you'll see that it's not a very clear path or, oh yeah, you would do that role after this role. And yeah, that makes sense. It doesn't. And there's probably a reason for that. Again, I always went back to my functional skill set and said, what is it that I want to do? How do I want to impact this organization? And furthermore, how do I want to impact externally? And that combination of functional skill set and that drive of me wanting to somewhat, I guess, contribute really kind of led to these roles. And I think aside from the first role, all the other roles were either new, created new, or it was just created, or I helped create those roles. So again, going back to the Pathfinder, example that Natalia was mentioning, it was really about creating, and it was because I wanted to contribute to an impact to patients, but also to society in general in any small way. So that kind of led to this pathway within BMS. One of the roles that I do want to highlight is in 2016, you'll see BMS Network of Women. Again, this was a brand new role. I was the first general manager assigned to this network of women. Again, Natalia mentioned about the people and resource groups in organizations. This is exactly that. And it was from a gender lens. And again, when I was asked about this role, to take on this role, I didn't know anything much. I didn't know much about diversity and inclusion aside from being a female in STEM. But I said, you know what, if I can use all of my skill sets, including project management and the network and whatever else that I have, that'll be great. I'd love to contribute. So that's why I took on this role. And of course, the question that kept coming up is the key word that I mentioned earlier. Why not? Why not try this? If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But most of the time, or actually all of the times, all of the experiences that I kind of went through and asked my question, the why not question, and I took on, all of them really contributed to more learnings, more experience, personally, but also from a career perspective. So that's my second takeaway that I would, really convey to you is always ask that question of why not. And if there's no harm, if there's no negative sides to it, try it. Be the pathfinder, take on those roles, create those roles, because you'll be surprised as to what it would do to, the society and the organization itself, but to you as well. So I would truly emphasize that piece. That brings me to the very bottom line, which is my current role as the CEO of the GHIT Fund, the Global Health Innovative Technology Fund. If you go to the next slide, let me share a little bit about this organization. And I want to highlight the organization, not because of what we do and the great things that we do, but it's the type of organization that it is. And as you saw in my career path, I went from truly pharmaceutical, R&D development type environment to a completely different, this is a fund, so a completely different environment in global health. So I wanted to share that options that are out there. So don't think that, STEM, chemistry, it's lab and, that's all you do. There are different, really many, many different options out there. And truly go back to what it is that you want to do and how you want to take it. Sorry, if you can go to the previous slide, just very briefly. The mission in very simple words is that we fund organizations to do drug development, vaccine development, and diagnostics development for the neglected patients or neglected diseases that you see here, malaria, tuberculosis, and NTDs, neglected tropical diseases. And we do that through catalyzing partnerships. Again, the partnerships, I think the word came up earlier, between Japanese and global entities to really facilitate open innovation. So that's kind of what it is that we do using Japanese technology. If you go to the next slide, what's unique about this organization is the way it's funded. So we're funded 50% by the Japanese government and 50% by where it says private. So we have the pharmaceutical industries. You see the logos on the right. and you also have Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Welcome. So very different, diverse partnerships coming together to fund this organization. And from here, we fund partners to really develop those infectious disease areas that I mentioned earlier. If we go to the next slide. And we do contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. Obviously, number 3, the good health, because of what we do. However, we also believe that we contribute to other areas of SDGs. For example, no poverty, again, because of the areas that we're developing these products in. But also gender equality, you'll see that in the next few slides, but also reduce inequalities and partnerships for the goals, as I mentioned earlier, the open innovation piece. If you go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, the SDGs number 5, which was the gender equality piece, we do a lot of activities, conferences, meetings, events, etc., really promoting and empowering women's leadership in global health. Now, global health is no exception to other science areas. Still few female leaders within the environment. So we try to promote them and kind of really share what is out there, what are the options, what are the support groups that you can potentially have, et cetera, by having some of these speakers, as you see on the picture, by really speaking about their experiences and reach outs. So that's one area that we, kind of contribute to. The next slide. We also go to international or global conferences, right? So we have what you see on the picture here is the Women Leaders in Global Health conference. I believe that's going on actually last week. But this specific one was from last year, and it was conducted in Rwanda. And I think we were actually the only Japanese organization represented. But again, all the females, coming in together to really enable, empower each other, really, is what it was. And this meeting actually happens to be quite large. Think about 1,000 attendees altogether coming into Rwanda. And we rotate, it rotates every year in location. I believe the next one is in Asia. But again, another example of where GHIT can be is represented. And my final slide shows this Global Health 50/50 report. Again, it's in the global health arena, but there's a report that kind of has a grading system or report card, if you would, on how global health related organizations are doing in terms of gender equality and gender parity. And happy to share that for the last year's report, we significantly improved our scores. So just wanted to brag a little bit there, and that we were also featured on the report as to showing examples of what it is that we did to get to those scores, or to the improvements of the scores. So with that, just wanted to, again, share my experience. Here's my contact information. If you have any personal questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But with that, I'm going to give it back to Debra.
Thank you, Catherine. Given the time we have left, I really want to encourage our participants to start putting some questions into the Q&A box. I'll just lead with one that has already come in. And the question is for you, Catherine, whether there's some good resources that you might point some of the participants to for identifying what skill sets might be and topics might be kind of on top of mind now. And I just add to that, and I actually want the other panelists to comment on this as well. What, if anything, does the pandemic do in terms of opening up further opportunities for women to be entering the field of public health and biotech?
Yeah, so to answer the first part of the question in terms of resources, what I did throughout my career, even during school years or school days, is I talked a lot. I asked a lot of questions to a lot of people. So if I saw people in the field that I'm even remotely interested in, I would just reach out and talk to them. And I think in this day and age, which kind of connects to your second question of, this pandemic and this environment that we're in, remote access, right? So we have Zoom, we have, WebEx, et cetera. And I think it's almost easier to reach out to these individuals and just, kind of send a chat, send a note through LinkedIn or whatever it is. With this, modern age and technology, it kind of allows that to be done a little bit easier, I think, than before. So I definitely would encourage, if you're interested in any area, just to start reaching out to those people that you recognize your names. You'd be surprised as to how willing they are to respond to you and to help you. So that's one thing that I would say.
Great. I'm wondering if Natalia or Hyo-Suk, if you have any thoughts just in terms of the either the challenges or the opportunities that this unusual time presents for women in tech and other STEM fields. Just take yourselves off mute so that you can jump in.
Yeah, so I'll answer this in a couple of different ways. I had some really, there's really many inspiring things about what you said, Catherine, that made me think of the different skill sets that I really love in colleagues. And maybe, now even during the pandemic, it's like we're trying, I think for me, figuring out what's essential. What do we need to practice? What do we need to hone to help us get through these difficult times? For folks who are tuning in who are new to their careers and are coming into this work and they're like, what can I do? Is it a technical skill set that's really going to differentiate me? Is it something, what do I need to pick up to really, stand out from the crowd? I would actually really emphasize practicing during the pandemic. And I would just say, broadly speaking, some of the softer skills. I say softer skills because sometimes when we say that, it means that it's almost like we brush them off too easily. So I like to call them applied skills. So applied skills, I would say to focus on are collaborating, work on open source projects, work on projects with other people, pair programming, really get a sense of what it's like to work with people from different regions around the world. Can you work with people who are different than you? And how can you work out those differences? How can you be better because of those differences? I think that's really important. I think that participating in communities online right now is really important. When we're looking at participating, whether it's going to be on GitHub or whether it's going to be on Twitter, there's a lot of communities of opportunity there. I think, when I talk to parents specifically, when they say, like, how can my son or daughter get a job at Google? And I say that, some of the things that I really look for are empathy and emotional intelligence as some skill sets that can really help me bring that candidate in and help me know that they're going to be great in a teamwork environment. I also think it's really important to be entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial. How are you not waiting for opportunities, but how are you making opportunities? And I think that when we sit back in this pandemic right now, like I said, it's helped me personally even think about what is essential. Good food, family, some really nice pajamas, and, thinking about what is that book, what are some of the insights, what can I take away that's less about loss and grief, which all of us are definitely finding, but in that place of loss, I think there's a place to create. I think there's a place to reframe. I think that the old normal is gone. And now as pathfinders, as people who are spearheading what's next, be a creator in that new normal. And I think that, if anything, this pandemic has also taught us to be flexible. There are no such things as plans anymore. And, when we think about what's next, I think having the skill sets, that Catherine mentioned, I'm a program manager at Google. I call myself our feminist in residence, but I have to sit on a job ladder and I'm a program manager. And so I really do utilize a lot of those core project management skills. So I would say, focus on collaboration, focus on empathy, think about being entrepreneurial and use this moment to create what's next. And I would love to hear your ideas on Twitter, about what you're needing help with. What resources do you need to create, whether they're applied skills or technical skills?
Great. We have a question for you, Natalia, but I hope others will also jump in on this. And that is, you talked about the leaky pipeline, and we use this term pipeline in the title of the panel as a metaphor for, the supporting ecosystem of programs that enable women, to move through their careers. So I'm wondering, what if you think we need to rethink that metaphor of the pipeline. It maybe if it's leaking, it doesn't sound like a great one, but maybe you could share your thoughts, and I hope Catherine and Hyo-Suk will also jump in.
Yeah, I'll be brief on this one since I just took up so much speaking time before. So I agree that it is not a pipeline problem. I strongly believe that there is talent here, now, and ready to be in this tech industry. And it is about removing the systemic and institutional barriers that prevent people from all backgrounds, all walks of life, all career experiences to participating in the tech industry. And I would say broadly speaking in many industries. And so when we talk about it being a pipeline problem, I think we push the problem away from ourselves because it's difficult to confront what isn't working. Oftentimes I'll talk about, companies that have been, 20, 30 plus years old. It's hard to change, old habits die hard, as they say. Right. And so I think there's unique opportunities for startups to actually do this better and do it earlier. Focusing on better hiring practices, focusing on better inclusion and belonging at the start so that you grow a company that is one that attracts talent because of the culture that you have and the ability to progress and retain talent. So I do think that startups in a lot of ways are at an advantage when it comes to forming the company early and often in a way that's guided by the community and guided with the right values. I think that, with the pushing away of the pipeline problem, we wait and we say, oh, well, the next generation will be the ones that fix it. Well, let's put the onus and accountability on ourselves that it's up to us to dismantle the things that are preventing our underrepresented and marginalized communities from participating. And so I really take it upon myself to be accountable to that work every single day. And I think that all of us need to think about in all of our positions, what can I do with my power and my privilege to make sure that more people can access the career opportunities that the tech industry holds.
Debra, I think you're on mute.
Hyo-Suk, would you like to comment on this question?
I want to say about this year's status in Korea, the women scientists and engineers, and KWSE. As you know, the many female, especially for young women scientists and engineers, has a very big problem. To maybe they handle they must child care and the job in professionals, and right now the KWSE prepare for some survey and making a survey about maybe 20 questions about the kind of what's your problem. And anyway, we make a survey about the status of the influence of the COVID on your job, and finally, when we had some after the survey, we summarized the result and this report to government, and we also in press, to share the difficulties of the female scientists and engineers. Right now we are preparing.
Good. Catherine, we'll give you the last word, and then we're going to wrap up for the evening or the morning.
All right. Thanks, Deborah. So I completely agree with what Natalia was saying in terms of the systemic challenges and issues that are out there. Those are being tackled, and that's great, and more work needs to be done. Absolutely. However, I also would say individually for all of us, right? Going back to the theme that I was going back to in my session, it's really know what your strengths are, know what you want to do, and really pursue it. Don't be afraid. Ask that question, why not? If you get resistance, like the example I gave you with my school, the chemistry chancellor, kind of challenging me, it's okay. Face those challenges and say, no, it's what I want to do. And this is why I want to do it. And, it's going to have an impact, and I really want to pursue this. And most of the time, again, they will let you, they may say, okay, they may look at you funny, but they'll let you do it and try it. So don't be afraid of that is what I would say, and know what you want. That's functional skills.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. The idea of no bad outcomes and like really experimenting. I think in all of our fields, we all experiment. So take that too as a lesson in life of there are no bad experiments and there are no bad outcomes. You just have to put your first foot forward and give it a try.
Absolutely.
Great. I want to thank our phenomenal panelists, Natalia and Catherine and Hyo-Suk. You just did an excellent job sharing your experiences with us. I also want to thank our audience for joining us today for this discussion, and I hope it's really prompted more questions, but also have been an inspiration. I'm sure it didn't escape your notice that our panelists all talked about opportunities, not barriers. They talked about what can be done, what you can control as an individual with your own career, and I think that's just such a great view to and approach to take. Also want to thank our interpreters. I'm sure this wasn't easy to keep up with some of the discussion here, but they've done an excellent job, and we encourage everyone to continue the conversation and to network with other STEM professionals, either by joining the STEM Trilateral Slack group and engaging with us on social media. So we're now looking forward to the next session on, let's see, I know what the session is, next session tomorrow. So just want to thank you all once again.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much.